jot down any questions you might have or wait till the end, and then I'll try to do that in order. Answer Tuesday, not only is there a question on the ballot for sales tax, there are 3 council seats on your ballot. So we hope that you will certainly get the state of Oklahoma, the Cherokee Nation. We could not have done it without any of those partners prior. So there were areas that were completely destroyed and removed that were not repaired. They were a way to get it to spend it. And then if you're lucky, you get 75% of it back. But that's what it costs us to push clear and take all the stuff that got blown down, blown over. Garrett's here. It's a big project. We got to get that stuff out of there. We're going to have a whole other FEMA disaster if we have or A&E reports and then file back with FEMA just to justify the work that you need to do. $400,000 in street signage and lights, which, by the way, FEMA's authorized about $56,000 of that. So this is how they operate, so you know. So you saw the root balls that were tipped over. Those root balls pulled up things like gas lines and water meters and sewer lines. So there's a lot of it in ruined storm drains and damaged streets and storm box structures. So a lot of that work had to be done and repaired. Plus, on top of the degradation in some of the streets that were torn up, because the amount of heavy equipment that were on them to do that cleanup. So that's all part of 2022, and that's what we call Substation 4 down by the Public Works facility. Drastically increased reliability. We were able to do the last 3 this last year, which has been fantastic. We also added what we call SCADA. It's an electric to our newest transformer was put in the 90s, and it was an overhaul / rebuild of a transformer that was originally manufactured in the 70s. 28 megawatt substations. All 4 of our substations are 28 megawatts. Anyway, we got those 3 days apart out of Substation 2 up on Tower Hill. It was overloaded. It was in the heat of the summer. It was really hot. So we brought in the same people that are doing our electric master plan, more on that in a minute, and said, we got to figure out what's going on with that. And so they came in. We thought it was going to cost about how our taxes are structured, but we have restricted pennies. One of those pennies, a portion of it, you, the voters in 2019, said we want a portion of that has to be spent on nothing but parks. And so now that tax has been around since 1972, but it was just, hey, Councilor Calendar, how are you? And so we have to spend what works. So that's why that building is there. We couldn't spend the money on anything else. That was the greatest need for parks. It's a great looking building, and it's going to have access. Now, it also serves 2 functions. We're in the middle of a huge water treatment plant quality rehabilitation plan. We wanted to spend at least $1 million a year on stuff in neighborhoods, arterials, collectors. That's over in the Westwood addition. But those is the same crew that did the work on Florence, same crew that did the work on the Muskogee Curve. Water treatment plant improvements, huge expensive project. We hate to spend that kind of money, but we have to. And we're trying to shave cost off that. We're doing a lot of the work on the dirt work, the earth work, and the pipe, the stuff that we can do with our in-house construction crew, trying to lower those costs. This project should be done by the end of 2018 or $19 million. That was on capacity. That took us from being able to do 4 million gallons a day to serve up to 8.4 million gallons a day of water. Now, right now, we average between, if we were to wait 4 or 5 years before the mandate comes down from the feds and the state, I can't imagine what this project would cost then. Like all infrastructure, the longer you don't do it, the more money it costs, because the cost of everything goes up every year. Lowry Regional Detention Pond, if we farmed that out or gone out to bid on it, would probably cost us between 3 and 4. We think closer to 4 with labor rates. We have a phenomenal in-house, what we call construction crew. They do primarily dirt work. So those of you that saw the transformation of the lake dam over the last couple of years, if you've seen all that, we did that in-house. That would have been closer to a bunch of old direct bury electric lines that were put in 40+ years ago. They were rotting away. 2 of the 3 phases were gone. We would not have been able to provide power to hundreds of homes over there had we not done this project. Of that 4.2 sewer lines not flowing, there's a lot of I&I, so there's a lot of extra water and stuff getting into those systems from just rain events that go to the lift stations and to the sewer plant, which costs you more money to treat when it's just rainwater. So we had to go in and fix a bunch of that. The thought was, we don't want to go in and do one project, a year later do the pro NG to get done. But that was a major, major upgrade to the west side of town, not just those neighborhoods. That helped the lift station, that helped the power grid, that helped the water system, so it benefits everybody. Highway 66, that's the day. So But they want to come in this summer, and they have allocated or done a project cost estimate of about $5.2 million. They're going to start just south of Flint and King Road, go all the way north to Lowry, just north of Lowry, on that road, on those stretches of road, working to bring those drains, the storm drains and the waste of the stormwater drains up to grade, so when they come in and asphalt, there's no puddling or drainage. So if you've driven it, and if you're going south on it, that shopping center and the grade sits way up here, and then on the other side, you've got kind of the hotel or the apartments and all that. So that road's gonna be widened to 3 lanes, but in order to do that, we have to remove and relocate water stations, and then the year after that, we will go back in and build the brand new road up. So new base, widen it, deal with the storm drainage conveyance and all that stuff. Does everybody know the biggest contributing factor to a road failing? It's really not traffic, it's poor drainage. So when we turn around and do these road projects, a lot of times, a mill or overlay or resurfacing, that's the inexpensive part. The expensive part is tearing the road up to move your water lines, sewer lines, gas lines, all that out of the way, and then you gotta build that road back up. And frankly, roads are built a lot better now than they were 40, 50, 60 years ago. There's better engineering specs and design. So that's a big part of it. By the way, on this one here, this next year, ODOT said, look, we wanna do this for you. We kind of pushed them because the Centennial's coming up, and Rogers County has more miles of Highway 66, the mother road, than any other county in the state. And the state of Oklahoma has more miles of the mother road than any other state on mother road. So we pushed on them, and they said, yeah, we want to do it. Can you help us out? We went to the commissioners. They said, we'll contribute $500,000 to go in there and get those fixed up, and at least make those transitions a little smoother. $500,000 does not go very far when you're trying to fix roadways. It just doesn't. It doesn't go very far when you're trying to fix anything public infrastructure wise. And then city water distribution system improvements outside of the original part of town. Representative LePack, welcome, sir. That was a lot of water lines. So we went in and we replaced 6 or 8 different old pieces of material, miles that had been there forever. Ductile iron, ACP, plastic. So we had 8-inch, 6-inch, 4-inch. So all that came out. If you'll recall, we had a bunch of water quality issues. People were saying the water's discolored. Well, when you have a 100-year-old iron city, but we outsource the operation of it daily, because sometimes the private sector can do things a lot better than government can. That being said, with the improvements we've made in this water system, the improvements that you've allowed us to make and the council's allowed us to make at the treatment plant, 2024 was the first year that anyone can remember that the city of Claremore's water treatment plant or sanitary sewer treatment plant did not receive one single notice of violation. And that's a big deal because not many cities can say that. Now, we need to do it more than 1 year, but it's a start, ladies and gentlemen, and that's because of the investment we've made in your infrastructure. So we're gonna keep working towards that. This project will eliminate dead ends, fix broken valves, hundreds of hydrant projects. By the way, one of my biggest concerns and priorities that I want is Will Rogers going back to the east from basically the tracks back to Patty Page. The road surface is in terrible shape, but we spend a lot of time listening to you all and talking about the electric distribution and streets. They're very important, and I'm not here to hide anything. We acknowledge there's a lot of stuff that's old and in really bad shape. Nothing is as in bad a shape as our sanitary sewer collection system throughout this community. You don't see it, you don't think about it until it backs up in your house or your business, but I'm telling you that should be one of our biggest priorities. It is in bad shape, it's old, there's a bunch of old clay pipe, there's a bunch of old breaking down. Guess what sewer gases does to iron and ductile iron? It erodes it, it breaks it down. We've got to get those things addressed and fixed, or we're going to have real problems. So we're doing our wastewater collection and treatment system master plan, upgrading that a little more, but we're close to getting it. I anticipate that plan is going to be presented to us with millions upon millions upon millions of dollars in suggested improvements that we ought to find a way to pay for over the next several decades. Looking ahead, projects in the pipeline. Just so you know, the last 5 years, and I'm very proud of the council, even though it's changed a little from when I was hired on, part of me wanting to work here and take that job and transitioning from economic development, seeing how important infrastructure was, that was my background at another community, was the commitment that if we do this, we got to focus on infrastructure. And thank you to you all because you said yes and we're sticking to it. We spent $67 million to date or right now currently on total capital improvements in the last just under 5 years. To put that into perspective, we haven't collected but a little more than $20 million for those projects off that dedicated sales tax. I say that to say when people go, well, where do our utility revenues go? That's where it's going, ladies and gentlemen. Every single dime collected through sales tax on that 1 penny that it's allowed to, and utility goes back into the operation and maintenance of your owned assets. It's not the cities, it's the citizens. We're just the stewards of it. So $50 million of those projects completed with some revenue loan funds. The biggest one of that is the water treatment plant. We obviously didn't have $28 million laying around. We went to Oklahoma Water Resource Board. They sell bonds. We get low interest rates, pay that back over a 30-year revenue note, and that's tied to the water and sewer and stormwater fees. It's like anything. If you go get a loan, they got to collateralize, and you go, how do you make the payments? How can you guarantee? Well, I have a job, or I do this. For cities and governments, it's, well, you have these fees, and you have to allocate some of those to that debt service. So back in 2019, we were able to go out and borrow $10 million at 1.29% interest, and then in 2020, we borrowed another $10 million at 1.45 or 41% interest. That $20 million was all spent on capital projects, infrastructure, a lot of the stuff that we'll show you a list on here in a minute. So that means a general fund budget allocation from the sale of utilities and those other things in that period was about $17 million. But this giant number is the one that we talk about all the time, because our job on your behalf is to say, how do we make sure that we're accounting for what needs to be done in 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years? We can't think about just us right now. We have to get those things fixed, but we got to make sure that we're doing things to make sure that future generations have an opportunity, not be stuck like we are. So that's a big number. About 3 years ago, when I asked Garrett to put this list together for the first time, that number was $200 million. We haven't added a lot to it, ladies and gentlemen, but he accounts for the cost of materials, inflation, labor rates, the CPI, all those things that you have to. It wasn't platted, it wasn't given. So in Oklahoma, thank God, we're very protective of personal property rights or real property rights. The days of just going in and taking are done. You have to negotiate, you have to be fairly compensated. Our challenge is that everybody seems to think right now their property has gold-laden oil flowing under it, and so we got to deal with that. But you know what? We always get there. There's always a cost analysis to how far we fight those things. But we do not just say, oh, that's what you want. Here you go. One, it's not a good use of your dollars. Two, it's not legal. We can't overpay for stuff. We've got a lot of parameters in the law. So, but I say all that. You can see the amount of things that we want to do and need to do. And some of these are less important than others, but they all need to be done at some point, because all of these are going to continue to break down and get worse and worse over time when we don't address them. Water fund, raw water entity move. It's also coming up on 100 years old. This is no joke. When they need to close that thing off or open or switch the valve, there's valves at different elevations. So you have one deeper, you have one higher. So if the lake's at different levels, they have to literally get in a rowboat, go out there. So we need to move that for just water quality, but also accessibility, maintenance, and a few other things. Citywide water system improvements, we touched on that. Water treatment plant improvements, phase 3, that's a long way down the road, but we have to be thinking about how we do it. If this community, so that's one of those that's on the long-term plan. Oologah raw water line, I just mentioned that. Our redundancy and additional water that we need comes from Oologah. We have a very long pipeline that goes from Oologah to here. We have rights to 3 million gallons per day. The owner of the remainder of those rights is the city of Tulsa. So if we want to increase those water rights, we don't go to the Corps who owns the lake. We got to go to the city of Tulsa and go, well, would you release some of your water rights so we can have more water as we grow? But oh, by the way, the infrastructure we have in the ground between there you go, 12 million. Today when Garrett and I talked, it was a little higher than that. But again, this is a month old. Those are the types of things we have to think about, ladies and gentlemen. High pressure water tower and pump station on the south end. Everybody sees the water tower that's kind of on the hill just north of the new Atwoods. That water tower will only facilitate what we call the low pressure side of our water system. There's a high and a low. So that feeds Atwoods, and as that develops down that, it'll probably feed most of that. But if anything develops up on top of that hill, that water tower will not push water up to the fire suppression and the needed pressures on any development up top. Also, a high-pressure system helps us loop both the city's high-pressure and low-pressure water system, and again, just makes for more efficient operation at the plant and in the system. Sewer have been deferred or put off for decades, and they've also been in the ground for decades and decades. So, and then the electric, we all know the electric system is old. The distribution system is in relatively good shape. The challenge is a lot of the wire or the conductoring needs to be redone, because as the community's grown over the years and the farther it gets, the wire size is too small to carry the necessary currents to maintain a voltage that doesn't zap substations or fry your appliances. So every time we go to reconductor a section of line, which is about 3 phases, it's a little over $100,000 a mile, and that's us doing it in-house just on the material, plus that's without our labor. But then we've got, most of those poles are 40+ years old. So we have to also go through and reset poles, cross arms, all that good stuff. There's a ton of that. We do that in-house every day. We have an underground too, and we have 2 overhead. So those guys, it took them longer than they wanted to, because in the middle of all that, we started dealing with tornado stuff, but then there's just other outages that happen. So we continue to make, and we absolutely need at least 1 new substation, and we need to add capacity to the other 4. That's just the bottom line. New substation on here is at $7.5 million. That's based on a 28 megawatt, and that's just the components for the substation. That doesn't include the switchgear, the construction, all the other things. GRDA, in our talks with their engineering team, thinks that we ought to start planning on spending about $15 million per substation as we replace them. Again, all that to be said, right now we collect $5 million a year dedicated to infrastructure, all infrastructure. You can see what we're trying to deal with. Here's what we want. These are renderings. They haven't been decided on. We're not going to do these. They're not priorities, but it's the only thing that has a pretty picture on it, because there are no pretty pictures of sanitary sewer lines, water lines, or any of that. You would not want to see the pictures that we have. So one of the things that came out of that from citizen input, if we ever did anything, there's the existing dog park. I don't think you can see it on this thing, but that's the existing dog park. There's some opportunities for some trails in the future. We've worked with the state to get some TAP grants. But that's just a concept of what that area could be. Most of it's in floodplain, so we can't build anything there. So you can put parks and trails, and after conversations with the citizens and the user groups, they're not a priority. We're not going to dump a bunch of money into that type of stuff. We can't when we have all these infrastructure needs. But at some point, we own parks. We got to maintain them, and we got to improve them. We cannot let them go. And so when somebody says we shouldn't be spending money on parks, again, you voters said that we should. We're not going to circumvent your will, so we're going to spend money on parks to keep them up and growing and maintaining and making sure that we can mow them and that they work, and that our youth sports, which I think is one of the most important things that youth can be a part of because of what it teaches them, have opportunities. Again, none of this is going to take a priority over any electrical, water, sewer, and this is just what could be. Our priorities are parking, connecting Walnut to Con Park, to expand girls softball because they are growing and it's phenomenal. And then I've talked to baseball and soccer. They both said this need to be better for you. That's our mission, is to serve. And that's what we came up with. We have a vision to be an intentional community, demonstrating excellence and service to all of you. And our mission is very simple. Everything we do is serving, maintaining your infrastructure, your utility bills, making sure that you have access to information. If you report a problem, that we get to it as fast as we can. That's our job, service over self. Nobody goes to work in public service or in local government to make money, despite what some people will tell you. That's not how it works. So what do those values consist of? By the way, I'm so proud of this because all 230 plus full-time employees touched this, have a part in it, and helped build it. So nobody on the team can say, I don't buy into what you're selling. And if they do, they say, I don't want to be a part of that, we're going to help them free up their future and find an organization that they want to be a part of, because we're going to be about these things on your behalf. So we value our employees, our customers, our community. We believe in empowering everyone to succeed by fostering collaboration, again, partnerships, providing resources, and building trust. We build trust by doing what we tell you we're going to do. For 4.5 years, we've told you we're going to spend money on infrastructure and try to make things better. We've done those things. We have a long way to go, but that's how you build trust, by saying and doing what you say you're going to do. Or not just saying, but doing what you say you're going to do. Leadership by all, we're going to act with integrity, honesty, accountability, and deliver positive outcomes with transparency. Every single thing we do is done in the open, every vote is made, every document we have is available to you. Do an open records request, or call the city clerk's office. Nothing's done behind closed door, no decisions are made. There are components in the law where we have executive session to talk about the acquisition or selling of real property because it involves other people and their proprietary information. But decisions and votes are public, they always will be, they always have been, that is the law. Transparency, the other thing I hear, the city needs to be audited every single year, by law. Every single city, school district, county, political subdivision in the state, every year has to produce an audit to the state auditor and inspector. You go out every 5 to 6 years and we mix it up and do an RFP and find different auditors because you don't want to get the same people in the mix. But not only that, we go and hire another firm that's a CPA per our charter to come in and work with them and our folks to reconcile the books, examine every dollar, test everything so it can be presented publicly at a meeting and then presented to the state auditor inspector. All of those are available on our website. And guess what they've never found? They've never found we don't pay our bills. They've never found that we steal money. They've never found any of that stuff. Frankly, I can go out and do a lot of other things in the private sector and make a lot more money. But I love what I do, and I love what I do. You guys are an amazing community. But that's the type of people we want on our team, and that's who we have on our team. And if they don't want to be there, and they tell us that's not what they want, we're fine with that too. We are going to help them, but we're going to make sure there's somebody on board that has a commitment to you before they have a commitment to their own serving interest. So, let's talk about what's going to be on the ballot Monday, and then we'll take questions for you. I always remind everybody, thank you, by the way, the last of 4 meetings. 2 years ago, we had 6 town hall meetings, and we aggregately had about 20 people show up. This has been fantastic.